The black swan is a symbol of Western Australia because it is believed that it was at the Swan River in Perth that Europeans first saw a black swan. However, the swan could also be a symbol for Parliament too, but for a different reason. A swan seems to glide effortlessly over the water and everything is calm and in its place. But underneath the water, its feet are furiously paddling to keep it going in the right direction and to hold against the turbulent currents that threaten to drive it off course. A typical day at the Parliament might at times be calm, ordered and thoughtful, but at other times descend into a cacophony of loud voices, hyperbole and theatrics. The Parliament is the highest institution and the principal place of lawmaking in the state, but a lot of work goes into maintaining its noble traditions and ideals. And much of that work is unseen, a bit like the furiously paddling feet of the swan. So, what happens before the members arrive to begin their day at Parliament? Well, for a start, there are over 250 rooms and areas to be cleaned. That in itself is a massive job for the 8 people involved. There are over 30 chandeliers in the building, and this pure crystal chandelier alone is over 160 years old. It needs to be treated with great care. Each day, sitting or not, over 250 bins are emptied, every bathroom thoroughly cleaned, every painting dusted, and all 250 rooms or areas are vacuumed. Well, it is the showpiece building of the state.
The building doesn't like a lot of rain, and a couple of years ago we had a lot of rain and one of the Hansard offices got flooded, the ceiling caved in. We had to call in contractors, a lot of IT equipment was damaged, our carpets were saturated. We had to move the staff from one room to another so they could function, because as you probably realise, Hansard is a very important part to Parliament. So as far as the Hansard, as far as members of Parliament were concerned, nothing had happened. The only people who really probably knew was Hansard and Building Services and a few other people around the building.
But now the members are arriving at the Parliament. Some will have flown in the night before from Albany, Kalgoorlie or Broome, for example, if they are regional members, but the city-based members will drive from their homes. But for all members, meetings can start at 9 a.m. or earlier, and they might still be here at midnight. On a Tuesday, all members will have party room meetings so that they know all the details of what they will be dealing with during the sitting week.
Committees are basically used to perform discrete research tasks that the broader Parliament requires them to perform. So if a committee looks into an inquiry, it's easier to send 5 members of the Legislative Assembly rather than all 59 of them at one time to go and investigate an issue. They haven't got the time to do it, and it would also be an unwieldy process. So basically the Parliament assigns normally 5 members in the Legislative Assembly here to serve on a variety of standing committees, which can look into a variety of issues in regarding policy implementation by agencies, public spending by agencies, whether they're doing it effectively or efficiently, or whether agencies are actually performing statutory obligations that they're required to do. We can often just have deliberative meetings, and they're held behind closed doors. Public has no access to them at all, and at those meetings it allows the committee basically to have off-the-record, frank discussions about the evidence that they've gathered for an inquiry or potential issues that they need to look into. The thing that's important to remember with these parliamentary committees is that they have members of both sides of Parliament. It's important to provide them a means by which they can basically close the door outside of the public glare, take their party hats off for a little while and actually look at issues on merit and put politics to the side. Closed meetings allow them to do that. The other thing that happens in here quite commonly are the public hearings, which are one of the main ways by which committees gather evidence. It's either through written submissions or these public hearings. And often in this room, a committee will hold a number of public hearings on one day.
It's one of the better mechanisms for community engagement. First of all, as I say, the inquiry process is advertised, usually in the Saturday West Australian. Tweets are also issued. We've just come to social media as a platform, so we will tweet the fact that we're holding an inquiry, invite submissions, so we receive a lot of written submissions, all of which are considered by the committee members. Some people will be invited to give oral evidence on oath, particularly experts, but also members of the community. And Another recent initiative that we've had in the last year is that a lot of our hearings can now be televised.
Most members who are not a minister are on a committee. The committees cover a very broad range of topics. Some are standing committees, which means they are permanent, and some are select committees, which exist for a limited time and cover a particular issue. The committees meet on sitting weeks when the Houses are not in session, mainly on a Wednesday morning. The member for Geraldton, Ian Blaney, tells us what happens.
Say to the committee, okay, we can do some investigation. What would you like to look at? And various members will come up with different ideas, and the staff will go away. And one thing you've got to check that no other parliament in Australia has researched the same issue, because you would be wasting your time, and medical marijuana would be a case in that point, because I remember asking about that, and the committee staff looked at that and discovered that the New South Wales Parliament had done a report the year before on that subject, so you wouldn't go near it. And then you get a briefing note about these different issues, and from the briefing note the committee will make a decision to look into it. The staff will go and find who might be the obvious witnesses to appear before you, and then you'll start a series of hearings, and then from those hearings you'll hopefully, and I'd assume usually, have the answers you were looking for, and then they'll get drafted up in a committee report.
So now party room meetings and committee meetings are over, and it is time for the Parliament to sit. The Sergeant-at-Arms carrying the mace leads the Speaker in from his office behind the House. In the upper house, the usher of the black rod introduces the President, who is the equivalent of the Speaker. In both chambers, the government members sit to the right of the Speaker, or the President, and the opposition and crossbench members sit to the left. The crossbench is made up of independent members or from parties with just a few members. All members must be present on a sitting day, unless they are paired. David Templeman, the member for Mandurah, explains.
Pairing simply means that the balance of the numbers, in other words, the difference between the government numbers and the opposition numbers, are always maintained in a vote. It's a convention, so it is an understanding between the government and the opposition that if the majority is 3, if the government holds a majority of 3, that any vote should reflect that majority. And if someone is required or is away for any reason, there is a convention that that person is paired. In other words, that person is not there, so a person from the opposition is also not in the chamber when a vote's taken. So it's to maintain that difference in majority.
The sitting day always starts with prayers. This is the same in both houses. Parliament only sits on a Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. The order of business could begin with brief ministerial statements, petitions, papers for tabling, notices and grievances. The order of business can be found on the Parliament website. Of course, the most interesting and potentially heated part of the sitting day is question time, when the opposition gets the chance to put the heat on the government. Or so they hope. This is the seat of the Leader of the Opposition, and the opposition always gets the first question. Question time, or questions without notice, is the best known part of a parliamentary sitting day. No one is too sure what questions are going to be asked, and the opposition is hoping to land a knockout blow in front of the members of the public and the media.
Members, question time. The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Commerce. Minister, I refer to page 34 of the Building Commission audit report. Have you commissioned independent testing of the QE2 ring main in the best interests of public health? If not, why not?
This is typical of the Liberal Party. They have no ideas of their own. They just come in here to try and criticise on behalf of others what's happening with the solid government that we're providing to this state.
The decision of the McGowan government to move Perth Modern School from Subiaco to the Perth CBD was not popular with the opposition, and they used question time and debate in the House to put their position forward. The duty of the Premier and the ministers is to defend the government. Question time can seem like a game of confidence between the government and opposition. But of course, the job of the government is to govern. It must bring forward legislation and present it to the representatives of the people in the Parliament for them to debate, scrutinise and review, and from the government's point of view, hopefully pass it. The process called consideration in detail takes place at this table. Consideration in detail is just what it says it is. It is the time in the progress of a bill through the House when a minister can be called to the table of the House to answer questions about the detail in the bill. He or she brings with them 2 or 3 expert advisors. Generally, most bills get the support of both sides of the Parliament. However, it is the detail they argue about. The minister introduces the bill. That is the first reading. The Speaker will then ask the members if they are in favour or against, and generally the bill will pass the first reading. But a bill could face many votes before it finally passes the second and third readings. A vote is called a division, where the House divides into those in favour to those against. If the bill passes the lower house, it must now come up to the upper house for the consideration of the members here, and the whole process begins again. First reading, second reading, and third reading. Members don't have to be in the House at all times during a sitting day. They can come and go as long as they don't leave the building. That is why the House can seem almost deserted at times. However, there should be at all times at least 1/3 of the members there. It is called a quorum. Sometimes a vote is called to test the numbers. A few years ago, one member spoke for so long that the Parliament had to call in the chefs in the early hours of the morning so the members could be fed. Generally, the Parliament tries to keep family-friendly hours, but even so, the Parliament can sit to all hours of the night and morning. Now it is time to adjourn. Members and staff can all go home. Members might be back again in the morning, or they might have to fly or drive back to their electorate to be in their office to deal with the needs of the people whom they are there to represent. Sitting days are long days. On non-sitting days, nights and weekends, a Member of Parliament may attend meetings in their electorate, school graduations, or any number of public functions. For the members, each day is completely different, whether it be in the Parliament or in their electorate. Long hours, many nights away from home or family, and many hours flying or driving. Yet, at each election, there is no shortage of people wanting to be a Member of Parliament. Parliament is there for the people. The desire to serve the people drives so many members to put themselves forward for such a challenging job. We will conclude with Amber Jade Sanderson, Member for Morley and Secretary to the Cabinet, giving her perspective.
My responsibility is to work with a team of people in Hale House, Cabinet Services, and we manage the agenda of Cabinet. I ensure that our election commitments are being driven through Cabinet, that the Premier's priorities are being driven through Cabinet, but also working with ministers and ministerial officers around Cabinet submissions and consultation, ensuring that the right people have been involved in various Cabinet submissions, and that when decisions come to Cabinet, they're ready to be made, rather than having to be deferred or sent off for more consultation. Our meetings start at 9 o'clock, sometimes earlier, and they're generally party meetings. So we have a range of caucuses in the Labor Party. So we have caucus meetings, and then that runs through to about 12. And then there'll usually be a couple of other meetings in between. Then the chamber sits at 2 for question time, which is very important. So we're all in there, and I'll either work on any speeches that I have to give in the Parliament. While I'm there, I often take meetings up at Parliament because it's a good time to good use of that time, and then we'll sit through till usually, for example, last night we sat through till 10:30 at night, and that's pretty much a parliamentary day. No 2 days are the same. Last Friday, for example, I went to the Steiner Carnival celebrations at the German school in my electorate, and I got to parade around the school with the kids, and that's an awful lot of fun. And then on other days I'll be up here debriefing with the Under-Treasurer or the Director General of DPC about Cabinet, you know, all of the jobs that then need to be delegated out of Cabinet. So it's a really diverse job, and that's what I love about it, that every day is different. It doesn't matter which party you are from, everyone in the Parliament is there because they want to make a difference. and they want to make a difference on matters that are important to them and to their communities. And we might have differences of opinion of how we get there or what it is that matters, but at the end of the day, people are there and driven by, I believe, good motivations.